Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to CHEM 104. Hope you've had a good week so far. It's always tough coming back the first week. Still wiping off the being at home or wherever you were, chilling. Maybe you're working. So it's hard to get back into that groove again. But thanks for showing up mostly on time. We will try to start around 2:02, 2:03 to give a couple of minutes of grace. My name is Dr. Aaliyah Hefner, and I will be with you for this whole semester for Chem 104. Just out of curiosity, by show of hands, or you can say me, how many of us have had a chemistry class already, either in college or in high school? Okay, so some of us have. And those of you who have had a chemistry experience, how was it? Did it go well? Were you like, this ain't for me, but I'll try it again, I guess? How did it go? Was it tough? Was it easy? Okay. Okay. So we kind of have the run of the gamut from this ain't for me, but I'm here anyway to it was all right. So hopefully we can get everybody at least to the I think I can do this space if you're not there already. And for those of you who already are doing well with chemistry, you enjoy it, hopefully you'll continue to enjoy it. So thanks for your participation. Whenever I ask a question, even if it's a yes, no, like are you ready to move on? Or can we go to the next slide? I want your participation. I want your feedback. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know, did this practice problem go well? How do we feel about that? You want to do another one? Tell me yes, no, nah, help, something. It'll help make the time go smoother. It'll be less of me talking and more of us interacting. You can lower your hand if you don't have a question. So that's how I want it to go. This is our class, not mine. So you need to get the information. If you're here because you need to get at least a C, then that means you need to get the information and retain it. And if you have to take 105 afterwards, you really have to retain it. So let's make sure that we talk with each other, communicate the whole time. That way it'll go a little smoother. We'll get to know each other a little bit better. And we can get some work done. So here we go. We'll start with just a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Dr. Leah Hefner. I am from New Jersey, born and raised. I went to Pennsylvania for my undergrad in biochemistry because I'm a little bit crazy. And then after that, I went to Michigan, the University of Michigan, go blue, because I'm crazier still and got a PhD in biochemistry. Then I moved here to North Carolina for a postdoc at UNC Chapel Hill. Did that, took some time off, did the mom thing for a while, still doing the mom thing, but also teaching at A&T. So that's a very abbreviated version of my life and how I ended up here with you all. Now we'll talk about the course. As we go along, you can ask questions, or if something's not clear or whatever, just go ahead and jump in. If you're going to talk, you can raise your hand first so that I stop talking. Otherwise, you can throw your question in the chat. Also, I'm recording this, but your voice is not going to be recorded. I'm not capturing the chat part of the screen or anything like that. It'll literally be the presentation that you see in my voice. So it will sound like I'm having a long conversation with myself if you decide to go back and listen to the video or watch it on YouTube. So you don't have to worry about that. Your privacy and identity and all of that stuff is going to be protected. Whew. All right. Here we go. What do you need for the class? There's a textbook. You need a scientific calculator and Mastering Chemistry, the subscription for the homework and quizzes. In terms of the textbook, all I will say is this. You can do well if you do not purchase the textbook. It is up to you whether or not you want to purchase it or if you want to purchase electronic access along with your Mastering Chemistry subscription. But either way, you will be okay in my class. That's all I can say. You will need a scientific calculator. It doesn't have to be a graphing calculator. You just need one that can do operations like exponents and logs and that kind of thing. And I can see someone in the chat saying that they can't hear. If somebody says, hey, can you hear, and you can hear, then put in the chat you might need to leave out and come back in. Okay. So help each other out in the chat, because sometimes technology don't be working right. Okay. So we talked about the book, the calculator, which you absolutely need. You also absolutely need the Mastering Chemistry subscription. All of your homework and your quizzes are in Mastering Chemistry. And I want to say the subscription is like 130 some odd. That's what it was last semester. I didn't check this semester to see what it cost. But prioritize purchasing that subscription. You can click on Mastering Chemistry on Blackboard and go through Pearson to purchase a subscription. You don't have to go to the bookstore and buy the access code. If you do that, then I think it's a little bit cheaper, but you absolutely need to get it. Everyone gets 2 weeks free. So you can do your first couple of assignments, but you will need to purchase it so you can continue to keep up with the course. Any questions about what you need for the course? If you don't have a questions, you can say, no, I'm good. Okay. All right. So the grading allocation, which is homework and quizzes are worth what, exams, so on and so forth. So your homework and quizzes, all of that is worth 25%. And like I said, that's Mastering Chemistry. So an entire quarter of your grade comes from Mastering Chemistry, which is why I tell you have to purchase it. I can't give you the homework or the quizzes any other way. Then there's the participation part, which is 10%. For those, you'll be completing chapter check-ins. That's what I call them. And these are very short assignments, maybe like 3 questions or so, that you'll complete and submit on Blackboard. We won't have those every single week. I'm not trying to bog you down. But on weeks where we don't have Mastering Chemistry due, or weeks where we're doing some work where I want to see your work so that I can give you feedback, we'll do chapter check-ins. And between your participation doing homework and quizzes and your chapter check-ins, that will be your attendance. So if you haven't done an assignment in 5 weeks, that's you not attending in 5 weeks. Because anybody can just log into Blackboard and then just put it on mute or whatever. You can watch a movie, go take a shower, get some food, that's not participation. So it's engaging with the material and doing your assignments and handing them in on time. Then there's 4 regular exams. This is a very fast-paced course. So we'll have our first exam in a few weeks. Each exam is worth 10% of your grade for a total of 40%. Those exams will be administered using Respondus Lockdown. If you have been on campus for at least a semester during the Rona, then you have Respondus already on your computer. If this is your first semester or you're transferring, whatever, then we can have a little chat about Respondus. They're multiple choice exams. You get a certain amount of time to do them on Blackboard, and then you get to see your grade right after. There's also a final exam, which is cumulative. It is worth 25%. It's also going to be administered using Respondus. So you can't just forget everything that you learn. Everything builds. So by the time we get to the final exam, you'll need to kind of string concepts together a little bit and do that final exam. I will prepare you. We will do exam review and final exam review as best we can. We have a very tight schedule to make sure that we cover every chapter and all the topics that you need to be successful in 105 if you have to take 105. Are there any questions so far about how you will be graded in the class? Yeah, I was going to say, this is the time where you say yes or no. I meant it. I want your feedback because I don't want to just talk to myself. Excellent. Thank you. So I always get this question about extra credit. There are extra credit questions included on exams, homework, and quizzes at my discretion. You'll always get extra credit on exams. Some homeworks and quizzes might have an extra credit question here or there. There are also what's called dynamic study modules. And this is on mastering chemistry. Those are available for the entire semester, and they are related to the topics that we cover in class, particularly the more difficult topics, the ones that use a little bit more math. So you can use those to practice and study for the exam and earn extra credit along the way. So those are your extra credit opportunities. I do not give individual extra credit assignments. Everyone has access to the same amount of extra credit. However much you do is however much you get. So when we get to midterms, then you're like, oh, see, I thought that I can't give you anything extra. Everyone gets access to the same thing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. And I'm trying to be fair to give everyone access to the same level of instruction, to the same help, and to the same extra credit. Grading policy for this class. Yeah, go ahead. I'll go back. Go for it. So the dynamic study modules done by the end of the semester. I want to say it's like mid-finals week, so like May 5th or something like that. But you literally have now until the end to do as much of that extra credit as you want. And then on the exams, you have the opportunity to score above 100%, which means you can miss a couple of questions and still get 100. And, that'll help you out. So is that more clear? Great. All right. Grades. A lot of us are concerned about grades in this class. So if you need to get at least a C minus in this class is a 63. It's a tougher class. Chemistry is not friendly to everyone. I do believe that you all can do it. But it's about how much time you have and how much time you're willing to allocate to the course. So if you need to get at least a C minus, that's a 63. A straight up C is a 65. If you're looking to just pass the course, that's a 55. So those are some of the key numbers you're going to want to keep in mind when you're looking at your class grade. When it comes to grades, I update your grades pretty often. The Master in Chemistry grades I update every few weeks to give you an idea of where you are. Your exam grades are updated, pretty pretty soon after you take the exam. And then the chapter check-ins, which are participation, I grade those and I give you feedback. So if you look at your grade on Blackboard, you can also see what I've said about, each of the problems that you've done. If you got points off, I don't just give you a grade, I tell you why. So you'll get to see what your class grade is, and you won't be surprised when it comes to midterm time. Are there any questions about grades, how you'll be graded, what your goal needs to be for a grade in this course? Anything like that? Okay, good. Just want to make sure because it's a lot of information all at once. So that leads us to the expectations for this course. Okay, we're all grown, or at least partially so, me included. I make recorded YouTube videos for the class. I'll post the links on Blackboard. We'll talk a little bit more in a second about how I post things on Blackboard and where you can find all that information. I expect you to watch those videos and take notes, preferably before we have class. That way we have kind of a common ground. You've seen the information before, and we can jump into more practice problems, and you can get a chance to see where you have issues and what your questions are versus being introduced to it for the first time and it being kind of all a big question mark and you need to kind of work some on your own. If you can't watch the lecture beforehand, you can't get through it all, that's fine. Still come to class and participate. So that means answering questions, asking questions if you have them, doing the practice problems, being active in the course. That will only help you do better. I focus on practice problems during the live lectures because I can give you feedback, and that shows you directly how much you understand or don't understand about a topic. So again, it moves really fast in this class. If you can't do the problems, then you're not going to do well. Look at the lectures beforehand, participate in class. The homework and the exams will go much more smoothly for you if you do. If you need help, or if something's happening in life, you need some grace, you need an extension, use course messages on Blackboard to talk with me. I have office hours Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Whoops, that's not how you write an 11. So it's 11 to 1 p.m. If you need something outside of that, then it's by appointment only. Send me a message using course messages, or you can, hang out after class and then say, hey, Dr. Hefner, can we set up a time? Or you can send me a private chat message during class and I'll get to you. Anything like that. But make sure that you give me 24-hour notice. So don't send me a course message on Friday at 3 p.m. saying, hey, can you do a Zoom or can we do office hours? Because the answer is going to be no. I can't just drop everything and come and do office hours. I want to help you out. I want to be available, but you got to work with me too. I got a whole family. We haven't had a new addition last semester. So I got 4 kids, y'all. 4. I have 1 on my person right now. So life is a little bit crazy. Thank you. Much appreciated. Life's a little bit crazy for Dr. Hefner, but I'm here for y'all. I'm here for y'all. So that's why I need you to respect my time, just like I really try to respect your time and not give you a ton of assignments. The mastering chemistry is a lot. I try not to pile too much on top of that, and I try to make it as easy as possible for you. Okay? I appreciate it. Thank you. So, talk with me. I'm here. I want to help. I get the same paycheck either way. So you should use your resources. Talk to me. I'm friendly. I try to work with you as best I can. The last part of the expectations: complete your assignments, your exams, and all of that stuff on time and with integrity. With the homework, the chapter check ins, all that stuff, work together. If you haven't started a group me yet, get on it. Study together. If you have some people in your personal bubble that you can physically hang out with, do that. Otherwise, do it virtually. Connect with one another, help each other study, help each other with homework. You will do a lot better if you do that. But when it comes to exams, that's a test of your own knowledge. So make sure that you complete your work with integrity. Also, with the chapter check-ins, again, if you're working together, good. I love that. But make sure that when you're writing up your answers, that it's not one person taking a picture of their work and saying, okay, this is what we saying for number 1, y'all, and then everybody writes it down. And then I get 30, assignments that all have the same exact mistakes. That's not what we're trying to do. So help each other understand, but when it comes to writing it out, write it out your own way. That makes sure that you get it, and I can give you feedback on how you will actually try to attempt these problems on the exam. Are we good there? There's a lot of talking on this slide, and I don't like to do that. But the first day, that's just kind of how it is. So everyone cool? You know what's expected of you for this class? Okay. All right. So we're going to go over a few features of Blackboard that you probably already know about, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. The first one, so let me change colors here so you can see it, is the syllabus. Syllabus is posted. It's a PDF. You can always check that, reference it for when we're going over which chapter. Yeah, if you have a question, go ahead. I'm good. How are you, sir? Okay. Okay. So it depends on your major. And if you want to talk about that either during the break or if you want to send me a private message so that you ain't putting everything on blast about your life, we can do that and we can figure it out. Yeah. So send me a message and we can work it out. Okay. So, syllabus. Make sure you're familiar with it. It's got a lot of information, but I pretty much told you everything that you really need to know anyway. If for some reason there's a major change, 1, I'll tell you about it, and 2, I will post a revised syllabus and let you know. Course content. This is going to be where you find everything pretty much for the course. So it will have each chapter has a folder. You've only got the one folder now, but as we go on, you'll have a folder for each chapter. Each exam will have a folder. So don't go for the quizzes and exams and tests. Don't try to find that. Just literally go to course content. That's where everything will be. We will usually have some kind of an equation sheet. So any resources that you're allowed to print and use on the exam will be in that folder with the exam. So for exam 1, there will be a folder available during the window that you're able to take exam 1. Open up the reference sheet, print it out, look it over, and when you're ready, you take the exam and respondus. That's where I post links for all the YouTube videos. I post extra practice for some of the chapters, all sorts of resources. I also post the notes. So everything that you see me writing on the screen, that's captured in PowerPoint. I make it into a PDF and I post that for you. So you get the PDF of the recorded lecture and the live lecture for you to reference. So if it's something on the screen and you're like, I didn't get to write that down, you can literally print out this exact lecture and put it into a 3-ring binder or something like that if that's your jam. Okay. We've got announcements. That's my primary communication to the class. I let you know when things are posted, when things are available. If there's a change, like say, oh, we're starting class 10 minutes late or something like that, I'll send it out in an announcement. Course messages is our primary individual communication. And I'll show you how to send a course message using Blackboard. Collaborate, you're here, so you already know how to get here, but that's the link that we use for our class. Your grades you can look at whenever you want. And I did this before I set up the Mastering Chemistry, but there in Course Tools is Mastering Chemistry. Everything is already set up. All your assignments and due dates are there. So you can look at that and know when you have something due. For our class, Mastering Chemistry assignments will always be due Wednesdays by 11:59 p.m. And that's Eastern Time. So you have about a week after we have the live lecture to do the Mastering Chemistry. There's usually homework and a quiz. And don't sleep on that Mastering Chemistry. Don't wait till the day before, because it will take you sometimes 2 or 3 hours to go through, depending on the topic or the chapter. Now we're going to go through a few of these, sections in a little bit more detail. But are there any overall general questions about where to find things on Blackboard? If you have a question, you can ask. Okay. All right. Then we're going to go through this a little bit quickly. First thing is sending course messages. Chances are, if you want to say something to one of your classmates, you're just going to text them. However, if you want to say something to me, you don't have my number. You got to use course messages. I can tell you how to do it from the web. I don't use the Blackboard app, so it may be a little bit different on there. But the first thing you're going to do is go to course messages under the communication section. It's going to bring you to a page that looks something like this, and you'll need to click on create message here. Once you do that, it'll bring you to a page that looks like this with the compose message at the top. Before you start writing your message, you need to add a recipient. Click on the 2 up here so that you can see a list of all the people that you can send a message to. You'll find me in this box and click on my name. Then you'll click the arrow to add me to the actual recipients list. So Aaliyah Hefner, and it says instructor there. So you can't go wrong. Once you've added me to your recipients, then you can put in your subject line and you can, write whatever your message is. You're great. You can send me that if you want to. Okay, and then hit submit. So that's how you send a course message. If you send me an email from now going forward, I will kindly say, hey, please send me your request using course messages. Reference our first live lecture for how to do it. So I don't want to frustrate you, but the university wants us to use course messages. And honestly, it's easier for me because I teach multiple courses. So I may be like, I know your name, but I can't remember which class I have you in. So if my response to you is, hey, what class are you in? You're going to be like, really? Come on, lady, I need help. But with course messages, it's all in our class page. So I already know what information I need to give you. Course content. Right now, so this is from another course. What you actually see is chapter 1. And you'll see a folder for each chapter. After this class, I will also put in a folder called live lecture that will have the YouTube link and the notes. So you can access that if you need it. If you missed something, or if you're going back to do your homework or trying to study, you can access those things. And I will send an announcement when I've posted it. Typically, I will upload the video and the notes pretty much right after class, unless there's some life thing that makes me unable to do so. Announcements, again, you can check these. They will come to your email, but you can click on the announcements link here, and all of the announcements from the past will be lined up there. I'm going to pin the announcement that I send next week that has my office hours and how to access them. So if you need that information, it will be pinned in the announcements. That's it for the course overview. If you have any questions, this is a good time to do it. Otherwise, we can take a short 10-minute break and kind of shake out our brains, wiggle around a little bit, and we can jump into chapter 1. So if there's no questions, I have that it is 2:36. So we can break until 2:46 p.m. Then we'll come back and hit the ground running. Maybe, maybe not. This week will likely end a little bit early because the material is pretty easy. But most weeks we will go up until about 4:30. All right, we're on break. Do what you want. Be back in 10 minutes. All right, everybody. It is 2:46. It's time to get back to it. Chapter 1 is pretty easy. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look at the video beforehand. If not, you can always look at the recorded video after this. We're going to jump into chapter 1, which covers chemistry in our lives. So, in the first few slides in the recorded video, we talk about chemistry, matter, and chemicals. Those are 3 vocabulary words that you will need to know. So I want you to take a minute and match up the definition with the word, and then we'll go through and fill them in together. So I'll give you a minute or two to read through it, and even if you didn't get a chance to watch the video, you can probably get these right. So I'll give you a minute, and then I'll ask you to put your answers in the chat as we go along. All right. So hopefully everyone has come back from break, and we can jump into this. So this first one, matter. Which one is the definition, A, B, or C, for matter? Yeah, it's B. All the substances that make up the world, that's matter. What about chemistry? Yeah. Chemistry is the study of the composition, structure, properties, and reactions of matter. And by process of elimination, A chemical is C. Substances with the same composition everywhere they are found. Know these for the exam, and it'll also show up on your Chapter 1 homework in Mastering Chemistry. I will do my best to point out these vocabulary words as we go along in each of the chapters, so it's not a surprise to you when we get to the homework. Okay, the next question. A little bit of a silly question, but you will see questions like this in your homework and on the exam. Which of the following does not contain chemicals? You can just put your answer in the chat. We've got A, a pill of ibuprofen, B, a glass of milk, C, light, and D, a rock. Which one does not contain chemicals? All right. So this one, I got y'all. It's C. So we had a mixture of people saying C and D. So rocks actually contain minerals and salts and things of that nature, which are chemicals. So rocks do contain chemicals. But light is energy. And energy is not a chemical. Everybody good on that so far? Good. And don't ever feel ashamed to stop me, even if you're like, man, everybody else got this right. Or it seems like everybody. Because there's 30 some odd people in here. That wasn't 30 responses. Okay? So if you have that question or if you feel lost, at least one other person does too. So don't be afraid to speak up. That's what we're here for. Okay. So we also covered the scientific method in the recorded video. We'll quickly go over, I'm not going to give you the exact definitions from the textbook, but we're going to talk about what these are. With the scientific method, it's really just a way of thinking. The first thing that you do is you make an observation, right? You see something in nature that always appears to be true. So maybe you observe that a tree grows in a particular way, in a particular space, right? Or you observe an animal's behavior, or you observe how, some chemical interacts with another chemical. And, the interaction is always the same. You make that observation, and then you get to thinking, why is this? You make a hypothesis. That's an explanation. An explanation for your observation. That explanation needs to be something that you can test. Once you have your hypothesis, then you set up an experiment. An experiment is just a test for your hypothesis. And at the end, you get a conclusion. So that includes some kind of results and analysis. And the big question is my hypothesis correct? If it is, well, hooray, but you probably have more questions anyway. If it isn't, then you need to revisit. Maybe you need to do more observations, revise your hypothesis, and then come up with a new test. Or maybe you need to tweak your test a little bit, and then you add on your conclusions with more results, more analysis, etc. So are these steps clear for the scientific method? Are we all on the same page? Great. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Now we're going to test it. Okay. And if ever you want to like copy something down, you're in the middle of writing a word and you're like, she changed the slide. You can say, hey, can you go back? And I'll happily go back. I'll give you a few seconds. Now we're going to test our knowledge. There are 3 statements here. Each one of them is either an observation, hypothesis, experiment, or conclusion. I want you to read these and identify which one of these, which one of the categories they fall into. I'll give you 2 minutes to read it, get it down in your notebook if you so choose, and then we'll go over it together. So I'll ask for your input for each one as we go along. I'll give you 2 minutes, and then I'll check back in. Let's get started with number 1. You notice that your plant always grows towards the window. You can write O, H, E, or C for observation, hypothesis, experiment, conclusion. You don't got to type the whole word. Yeah. That's an observation. And one of the key words that showed you that, notice. Notice hints at an observation. Okay. Number 2, a study demonstrates sunlight is essential for vitamin D production in humans. Observation, hypothesis, experiment, or conclusion. Okay. So we've got a little bit of a mix. It's mainly conclusions, it looks like. But we've also got some people saying it's an experiment. Well, I'm with the conclusion crowd. And what clues you in is the word demonstrates. So they didn't talk about how they came to this conclusion. They just said that they did. So this is a result that's discussed here. So when you see a study demonstrates something like that, that's a conclusion. Okay. What about number 3? You think plants grow towards sunlight. Observation, hypothesis, experiment, or conclusion. Yeah, this one's a hypothesis. Keyword here, think. So when you're doing these on your homework and for the exam, take note of the words that are used. The verbs will help you understand what kind of statement you're dealing with. So if it were an experiment, then you'd hear something about, what kind of a test someone did, that you grew 3 plants in 3 different locations or something like that. If we're looking at testing the hypothesis in number 3, that you think plants grow towards sunlight. So it would be more action involved, some kind of a test that you're reading about. So make sure that you practice these. They will be in the homework. Do we have any questions, or are we ready to move on? Okay, so it looks like we're ready to go. Now we're going to jump into the key math skills that were covered in the video. This is again to make sure that we're all on the same page. So if chapter 1 is just straight review for you, then that's a very good place to be. If it's not, then make sure you let me know, because if there are areas where you're struggling, then we can make sure that you get the help you need and get you on the right track. Now we're going to talk about identifying place values. So we're going to fill in what each of these places means. We've got thousands, hundreds, tens, ones. Then you've got a decimal point. You cross over the decimal point. You've got tenths with a THS, hundredths, which I'm a struggle to fit because it's a long word, and thousandths, which I will also struggle to fit because it's a long word. You need to know these place values and identify when a digit is in the ones or the tens or the hundredths, that kind of thing. That will be particularly helpful when you have to round a number to the tenths place or something like that when we're doing some real problems. So take a minute or two, I'll give you 2 minutes, to identify the place value of each underlined digit in these 3 questions. So 2 minutes, then I'll check back in and we can go over it. All right, let's get started with the first one. That underlined 5, what is its place value? Yep, that is the tens place. What about number 2? That's the hundredths, right? And then number 3. The tenths place. Again, if this is not review, or you're like, I forgot that, it's totally fine. You can let me know and I can help you out. So remember these, you will see it in your homework. Okay. Now we're going to do a quick review of just the basic mathematical operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And we're also throwing in the use of positive and negative numbers. So I've got 5 little math problems here for you. Feel free to use your calculator. You don't have to do it by hand, but I will put in my little soapbox speech about calculators. It's a love-hate relationship. Love calculators because you can do pretty complex math. You don't have to sit here counting on your fingers and toes, borrowing people to count their fingers and toes, and especially with the vid, you can't borrow anybody's fingers and toes now. However, that calculator will tell you exactly what you want to hear. And what I mean by that is the calculator will tell you the answer to whatever you put into it. It will not proofread to make sure that you put in the right numbers from the problem or that you use the right strategy to solve the problem. It will simply tell you the answer to the question you asked it. It won't tell you units. It will not round or tell you significant figures. So you cannot turn off your brain when you use your calculator. You have to check the calculator, not the other way around. So go ahead, do these problems. We'll go through them one by one. Make sure you know how to use your calculator. Refresh yourself if it's been a while. Especially when you're using the negatives, there should be a little key that looks like this on your calculator for putting in negative numbers. Familiarize yourself. I will give you 3 minutes to go through these, and then we'll check in. Okay, let's get started. What did we get for number 1? Should be 0, right? Positive and a negative, they cancel out. Number 2, what do we get? Yeah, so it should end up being, if you were doing this by hand, those 2 negatives come together to make a positive. So you're essentially doing 125 plus 96. And number 3, what do we get? And you should get a negative number here, negative 82. The negative 145, that's much bigger than the 63. So your answer should definitely be negative. Number 4, what do we get? Negative 13. So we've got 65 divided by negative 5. So your answer should be negative. And the last one, negative 25 times negative 4. Negative times a negative, you get a positive, so it should be positive 100. All right, so hopefully this is review, and it's not making your brain hurt too much. It's a way to kind of ease on back into the semester. We're going to keep on with the math skills. It will likely end early today, but it won't be like that every week. Just going to let you know. Now we're going to move on to percentages and word problems. You will encounter a lot of word problems in this class, especially with your homework and quizzes. You need to know how to read through a problem, identify information that will help you, and then answer the actual question. So let's go through this one together, and then we can work it out. I'll let you do another problem on your own. There are 45 students in the class. Only 75% of students are present in class. How many students are present? Round your answer to the ones place. For a percentage, we're talking about a part over the whole times 100%. We know that 75% of the students are present. So we know that part. We're told that there are 45 students in the class. Is that the part or the whole for our equation for percentage? It's the whole. We don't know what the part is. We'll just call that X. The steps that I did here, we read the problem. I usually like to reword the problem. So number of students present, question mark. That's what we're trying to figure out. I wrote down what I knew, which is how do you calculate a percentage, and then I filled in what I knew. We were told 75% of the students are present. We were told how many students are in the class total. Now what I want you to do is figure out X. How many students are present? And make sure that you round your answer to the ones place. You can put your answer in the chat when you get it. So no, I mean the ones place. We can't have a tenth of a student, so I want a whole number. Yeah, it looks like everyone is getting it. So your calculator will tell you that. But let's walk through it just to show you how, just in case. To solve this problem, the first thing we're going to do is multiply both sides by 45. And this is just one way to do it. There are others. When you multiply by 45, you're getting rid of that 45 down in the bottom. So now you've got some big number is equal to 100 times x. You divide by 100. That gets rid of the 100 on one side, and we find that x is equal to 33.75. But we're not done yet. If you put that answer on your homework or the exam, it would be wrong, because you have to round your answer to the ones place. I like to use a lot of colors. The ones place is this second 3 here. So we're looking at the 7 to see if we need to round. If the number next to the one you care to round is 5 or more, then you increase. If it's less than 5, you stay the same. Here it's 5 or more, so we say 34 students. On your homework and on exams, you will rarely have just a plain number. You will also have units. In this case, it's the number of students. Whenever you're doing your math, make sure you follow those units all the way through so that your answer has the correct units. You can lose points for not putting in proper units on mastering chemistry, and it could be the difference between the right answer and the wrong answer on an exam. Units are very, very important. How do we feel about this problem? Good, meh, hated it? Let me know. Let's go on and do another one. I'll let you solve this one yourself. It is a different problem. So you've got 45 students in the class still. 20 students are living on campus this semester. What percentage of students live off campus? And you have to round your answer. Oh, that shouldn't say the tenths place. It should say the ones place. My bad, y'all. Round your answer to the ones place. Oh no, I'm confusing myself. It's the percentage. I do want the tenths. Forget that ever happened. Round it to the tenths place. So you're figuring out what percentage of students live off campus. I will give you 2 minutes to get started. If you get stuck, that's okay. We'll go over it together. All right, so it's been about 2 minutes. I'm going to start solving the problem here. So I'm going to set everything up, and then I'll check in with you to see how you did. So let's first go through and figure out what it is that we know. Starting with our equation, this is always what a percentage means. We know that we've got 45 students, and that's our whole. We know that the question is the percentage of students off campus. And we know that 20 students are on campus. The way we can figure this out, there's 2 ways to do it. We can simply say, well, the number of students off campus is equal to our whole, which is 45 students, minus the 20 students that are on campus. And that gives us 25 students. then you can say 25 divided by 45 times 100% gives you 55.555 repeating. You round at the 10th place, so you're looking at the one next to it, the 100th place. It's 5 or greater, so you round up to 55.6%. The other way that you could do this is to calculate the percentage of students on campus, because we know that the on-campus and off-campus has to equal 100%. So if we take 100% minus the percentage on campus, then that would equal the percentage off campus. And you should still get something in the ballpark of 55.6%. How'd we do with that one? If there's questions or you want me to go over it again, that's perfectly fine. We can do that too. If it's not good for you and you see everybody else saying good, 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 you don't got to sit there and be like, not good for me. This class is for everybody. And if you don't feel comfortable, you can always talk to me about it later. All right. So I'll just label these because there's 2 different ways you can do it. Okay. Great. If you didn't get it, but you understand where you went wrong, then that's a good place to be. Yeah, we can go over this again. Real quick, we'll hit it back one time. What we know is we've got 45 students in class. 20 of those students live on campus. And what we need to figure out is the percentage of students that live off campus. The easier way to do it, in my opinion, is to first figure out how many students live off campus. We take the total number of students and subtract the number of students that live on campus. That gives us the number of students that live off campus. We take that 25 and plug it into our equation for how to calculate a percentage. 25 divided by 45, that's the part over the whole, times 100% gives you 55.55555. You round that to 55.6%. Does that make sense? Because you just need to know one way to do it. If you understand that, then you're good to go. So let me know how that did for you. Yep. So there's similar questions, just a little bit different. You're very welcome. Okay. Now let's keep going with equations, because we're going to need to know how to solve equations, especially when we get towards the end of the course. Chapter 7, Chapter 8, Chapter 9. They're all fairly math intensive, particularly chapters 7 and 8. This equation here is actually something that you'll see in chapter 8 for a gas law. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to solve this equation for V1. Now, I'm not going to ask you to do this. If you feel comfortable doing it, go ahead and do it in your notebook. But I want to give you this example so that if you see something like this on your homework, you can do it. Right now, we've got V1 T over T1 is equal to V2 over T2. It's a proportion. Doesn't really look like something that you can solve. But when you see something like this, what you can do is cross multiply. that means you're multiplying V1 times T2 and V2 times T1. Once you do that, this looks a lot easier. I like to circle the variable that I'm looking for. In this case, I know I'm trying to isolate V1. So everything else on that side needs to shove over to the other side. So I leave V1 on one side and everything else on the other. Actually, we'll stay with that. The next step is to divide both sides by T2. That leaves us with V1 on one side. The T2's cancel. And then we've got V2 T1 over T2. Now I wrote it like that because with gas laws it'll be helpful. If you wrote it like this, that'd be perfectly fine too. Okay? But that's how you would solve something like that, where you're starting with a proportion and you have to solve for a variable. The key is to cross multiply first. Does that make sense to everybody? And do you want to try to solve for one of these variables, or do you want to move forward with solving equations? Let me know what your preference is. Try one like this, or move forward. Okay, let's try one. This time, I want you to solve for T1. I'll give you a minute to get started, and then I'll chime in. So solve for T1, and I'll check back in. So starting with the cross-multiplied product, you have V1 T2 is equal to V2 times T1. We're trying to isolate T1 this time, so we'll divide by V2 on both sides. The V2 will cancel out to leave T1 on one side. And then you have T2 times V1 over V2 on the other side. So I didn't ask you to put it in the chat because that ain't exactly easy to write in the chat. But let me know how you did. Were you almost there? Did you get it? Still like, question mark, Dr. Hefner. Let me know how you're feeling. Okay. Good, good, good. Yes, go for it. Yeah, it's still the same. You're welcome. Okay. Let's keep going with equations. Now I want you to solve this equation for x and round your answer to the 10th place. We're focusing a lot on solving equations because it's something that students tend to struggle with. So I want to make sure we hit it hard in the beginning, and then as we get to it in the course, we'll do some more reinforcing, because it's not just the math, it's the math plus the concept, and that can make it a little bit more difficult. So if we make sure the math is there in the beginning, then layering on the concept won't be as bad. So I will give you another 2 minutes to solve this equation, and then I'll jump in and show you how to do it, and we'll check the answer. And if you need help, I'm here. I'm literally just sitting here waiting 2 minutes. So you can put your answer, or you can ask your question in the chat, or you can just ask it using your microphone. Either one. All right, y'all. 2 minutes. Okie dokie. Here we go. First step to solving this, you have to isolate that x, right? So we're going to add 12 to both sides to get rid of the 12 on the side with the x. Now we've got 3x is equal to 37. The next step in isolating that x is dividing by 3 on both sides, because we don't want to know what 3x's are. We want to know what 1x is. 37 divided by 3, you get 12.333 repeating. You need to round your answer to the tenths place, so your final answer is 12.3. How did we do there? Let me know if you got it. Let me know if you struggled. Okay. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. And we'll just keep moving forward. Y'all are doing great. We've got a couple more concepts, and then we'll be done. Throughout the course, there's the potential for seeing a graph, and you may have to interpret that graph. I talked about what goes on a graph in the recorded lecture. Hopefully you were able to see that. If not, you'll probably still be able to jump in and answer these questions. So with interpreting graphs, you always want to make sure you got all the information you need. But there are a couple of things missing from this graph. Take a look at it. Let me know what you think. What's missing from the graph? Yeah, there's no labels. We've got these numbers on the x and y axis. There's the x, there's the y. But no labels. We've just got numbers. So on the x-axis, it's time in minutes. And on the y, it's percent of students engaged. The title is Student Engagement in Class Over Time. What I want you to do is look at questions 2 and 3 and answer those, and then we'll come back together and talk about them. I will give you 3 minutes to do that, and then I'll check back in. Alrighty. So we know what pieces are missing from the graph. We said that there's no labels, so I put the labels up there. Then you had to answer questions 2 and 3. The second question asks you to describe the relationship between these two variables. So the variables are time and the percentage of students engaged. How would you describe this relationship? Try to do it in just a couple of words. It's definitely linear. As the amount of time increases, what happens to the percentage of students engaged? Yeah, somebody already beat me to it. It declines, right? So the words that we can use to describe that, there's 2 words that you might see. Indirect or inverse. Sorry, but Baby Hefner is making an appearance in the video, y'all. He'll make an appearance from time to time. Try to appease him as best I can. He doesn't want anybody but mama, so it's a little bit hard on daddy. Anyway, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Still got to do some work though. So number 3, estimate the percentage of students engaged in class at 60 minutes. What did you get? Anybody have an estimate? 60 minutes is right here. So you're going to go up and over. Go up to the line and go over. So it's somewhere in the 50%-ish range. So if you said somewhere between 50 and 55, that'd be about right. So in terms of interpreting graphs, you need to know what information might be missing if you see a graph, how to describe the relationship between the variables that are represented on the x and y axis. In the video, I talked about a direct relationship. So here I wanted to show you an indirect relationship, one where as one variable increases, the other decreases. And then just practice reading the graph, being able to interpret the data. If you didn't have any issues with this, then you should be good to go as far as graphs are concerned. So let me know, how did it work for you interpreting graphs? We good? Or do you need a little more practice? Okay. So that's all that we have for now. Oh, you know what? There's one more concept that we didn't cover that I always, for some reason, forget to cover. So let me do it on this slide. My apologies. Scientific notation, which is really easy. The format, you've got a number times 10 to the n. That number is called the coefficient. That 10 to the n, that's your power of 10. So an example would be 1.56 times 10 to the 7th. That's a number in scientific notation. We use scientific notation when we have a really big number or a really small number and we don't want to have to write a bunch of zeros. You can imagine how many mistakes can be made if you have to keep writing 7 or 10 or 15 zeros before the actual important numbers you want. So we use scientific notation. I'll label the coefficient here. And there's our power of 10. Let's say that I wanted to take an ordinary number like 17,500. And I wanted to write it in scientific notation. The first thing I need to do is make my coefficient. The coefficient has to be at least 1, no greater, or it has to be less than 10. I should write that a little bit better. Less than 10. The best and easiest way to do it is to find the first non-zero digit in your number. Here we're looking at the 1. You write that down. Then you put a decimal point and you put the remaining non-zero numbers. So if there's a 0 in between, you can write that. But you want to write all the numbers that are still significant outside of all the zeros at the end. Then we have to come up with the power of 10. Give me 1 second. Let me put this on pause. Okay. I have appeased him. He is mommy fed. We don't do bottles here. So sometimes it's struggle bus. I appreciate you. So we wrote our coefficient. That's at least 1 and less than 10. Now we need to figure out the power of 10. If we have a decimal point here, like we do in our coefficient, we need to write how many spaces we have to move the decimal to get it back to where it's supposed to be, which is all the way over here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you put it all together, it's 1.75 times 10 to the 4th. Now I want you guys to try an example just to make sure that you get it. Okay, there's a question. So the coefficient will always be whatever is before the decimal. We're going to do another example where we have a number that is smaller than 1, and that will be a little bit different. But right now, I want you to try one where the number is 1 or greater, and then we'll do the other kind. So I want you to take this number, 18,200,000, and write it in scientific notation. You can try to write it in the chat if you want to. You can use the little caret for the, 10 to the whatever, the power of 10. If you don't want to do that, you can at least put in the chat what you think the coefficient should be. So the first part of scientific notation. So remember that coefficient has to be at least 1, but less than 10. .82 is going to be your coefficient. Then you have to count all the way back. So if we put our decimal here, then you have to count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the power of 10 is going to be 7. 1.82 times 10 to the 7. It's just something you got to practice. We'll do another couple of examples, and this time it's going to be smaller than 1. Let's say that we have 0.00059. We still need to write a coefficient, and it's got to be at least 1 less than 10. That means that we've moved our decimal place to between that 5 and 9. To get back to where the decimal place should be, we need to move to the left. The number of spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, but we show that we're moving the decimal to the left with a negative sign. So for numbers smaller than 1, your power of 10 is going to be negative. So I want you to try one, and then we'll call it a day. .0000062. I want you to try to write that in scientific notation. The first part, figuring out that coefficient. You can write that in the chat. What is the coefficient for writing this number in scientific notation? Exactly, 6.2. Still need to deal with that power of 10. If we put our decimal point here, we got to get it all the way back to where it should be. We count how many spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's got to be negative because our starting number is less than 1. So 6.2 times 10 to the minus 6 is what you should have for this one. So when I post this, I'll also include a little section on scientific notation so that you have more than just my chicken scratch around the reminders. I actually have some nice slides for this. Somehow they didn't get included. My bad. If ever that happens where my brain doesn't include everything you need to do a homework or something, I'll give you more time to do it because that's not your fault. That's mine. So never fear. I always try to be fair like that. Mistakes happen. Y'all are accommodating. I want to do the same for you. So with that said, I end each class with reminders. And that's just, hey, this is due on this day, or you have an exam coming up, that kind of thing. And for you all, your first Mastering Chemistry assignments are due on Wednesday, February 3rd by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So it'll be due the night before we have class. Next class, we're starting Chapter 2. There will be a video posted shortly, and we are splitting Chapter 2 up over the course of 2 weeks. We'll finish most of it next week. We'll finish it up the week after that and move into Chapter 3. So there will be 2 videos for Chapter 2, just because otherwise it would be very, very long. Make sure that you try to watch those before we have class on Thursday. If you have any questions, let me know. Yes, the homework will always be due the night before class. We have the lecture, you have about a week to do it, and then we do another topic. That way you also have office hours in between now and when it's due. So on Tuesday, between 11 and 1, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., I have office hours. If that time works for you, you can just come on through, ask your questions, and then we can handle it that way. Otherwise, you can have an appointment and ask, or you can send me a screenshot of the problem or tell me what the problem is, because I can go into mastering chemistry and see what your exact problem is, and I can see the answers that you've submitted to give you an idea of, oh, you're just putting it in wrong, or to see what mistakes you made along the way for you to get the answer you've been getting, and we can get you where you need to go. So lots of ways to get help. You'll always have enough time. Yes, the homework is based on what we already did today. So between the recorded lecture and what we just did, practice problems and everything else, that's what your homework is on. There's no quiz this week. It's just the homework. He just wants to make it into the video. He's like, I want to be a star, Mom. Or he's just telling me, you need to be quiet, Mom. One of the two. If you have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, that's all I've got for you today. You're free to go.